Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the podcast. I am, as always, your host, Marina, and I'm super excited, very juiced up about my amazing guest today. He is a phenomenal man. Bobby F. Parihar is a numerologist, a spiritual guide, and an entrepreneur. But essentially, I love that he says he is dedicated to helping others tap into their truest self and go get the life they deserve. So we are going to be specifically focusing on numerology, but I'm going to let this go where it goes because having had a session with Bobby, I know that this man knows a lot more than just numerology. So Bobby, thank you so much for joining us on the episode this week.
Absolutely blessed to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so stoked. So I wanted to actually pre-frame a little bit before I let you take over. But I actually was at a dinner party a little while ago, maybe 18 months ago, and it's a dinner party with this amazing circle of women, very high achieving council, if you will, of people who create a really epic life. And anyway, this thing about names came up, and one of the ladies in particular has this random X in the middle of her name, and I'd always wondered why she did that. And she said, oh, well, and after I got married and I went back and the shit just hit the fan again. And so I just went back to, the other name and it all just became magic again. And I was like, pardon? What? And then everyone else started diving in the conversation. And when you're in having that moment, it's almost like when you're in high school and you went on an extended holiday, you come back and everyone's using this lingo and you're like, am I missing out on something? What's going on? And of course, Bobby's name came up in conversation. And my friend Christy was kind of like, you have to have a session with him. You have to talk to Bobby. He's the man. It's all about the numbers, Marina. And, I was raised with a very open mind around all things astrology and, clairvoyancy and all the things. So I was like, well, of course I will. And it took me a little while, but we did have a session and it was phenomenal. And you are amazing. And it's like listening to someone just speak a fluent language that makes a lot of sense. But at the same time, you're like, how do you know this? And where does this all come from? And so I said to you, we have to have you on the show. So I'm glad that we finally made that happen. And I'm so grateful to you. Can you tell us, firstly, before you dive into how you became a numerologist, what is the animal that best represents you in personality, behavior, or way of being?
I don't know. I guess I've had my spirit animal has been the Black Panther ever since I was very young, just because my name Bobby Parihar and then the initials BP, and it was this sort of running feeling that was like, oh, that's what I am. And then I had it tattooed to me, so that's my spirit animal. And we were watching the Jungle Book just a little while ago, where the Black Panther plays that the mentor to the little tiny man cub, and it just made me feel like, because I'm a father now, that I got to help these little wolves and grow up and my little kids, and like we were just watching it together, and I felt that sense that I got a chance to be that wisdom in the jungle that just sees all things and that knows all things, and that was just lazy but understood and powerful and didn't need to go and get it. So that's my animal.
I love that. And then if you could have a superpower, and some might argue that you already do, but if you were to have a superpower, which one would you pick and why?
It's I remember before it was flying, but then it became time travel. So that would probably be the one, because you could just make sure everything happens the way it's supposed to, and then you can just kind of do the redos you need to do.
You could tidy stuff up.
Tidy stuff up right now.
That's awesome. Okay, so tell us then, take us on a little bit of a time travel back into how did Bobby become, this just global phenomenon around numerology, and how did you feel called to that? And then we'll unpack what numerology is, but how did you get to do what you do in life?
Perfect segue, talking about the time machine that I need to have to go back to that time. What was it? 2014. I was basically a declared failure. I had like 30 jobs. I couldn't hold one for more than a year. And finally I found a place in corporate. I was a call center employee. I got promoted again. And then, up the ladder, they fired me. They didn't like the way that I did business. And it was the same old story again. I couldn't hold a job. And I said, screw it. This time I'm becoming an entrepreneur. So I bought this really expensive business, and I basically started on my path to, be in direct sales. And I was always a spiritual guy, but around 7 or 8 months into it, I got shown numerology. I was like, I already know numerology is this crazy thing. Trust me, I'll tell you all about it. But then I was then shown that your name is kind of like the frequency to a safe that locks the success. And when it was shown to me, then this light just turned on and something worked through me, like this spiritual feeling was like awakened within me. And I started like reading people's numbers and reading into numbers so much. I was like, this is such a crazy language. I'm going crazy here. Everybody got to relax and calm down. And then basically I've never stopped talking about it. Since then, I had a chance to create my family, create success, travel across the world. Like I've been living proof of what numerology can do. And then also just amazing, you know, just the life we've been able to achieve, right? So yeah, I guess it was strange because, you know, I was used to failure. I couldn't hold a relationship. I was 30 years old. I was living at home. I couldn't afford rent. And then like, and you buy the last thing you do before you go crazy, you buy a business, you become an entrepreneur. And then, you know, it just all started to come the same thing from that one introduction. It just all unraveled until I learned this technology. I like to call it a technology, but learning the algorithm of frequency around psychology, putting it in there, I guess what we'll talk about in a minute, it's been just outstanding.
But so just to be clear then, it wasn't something, you're not like a fifth generation numerologist, like literally it came to you and you essentially, by the sounds of it, and this is, it's interesting because I often say follow your obsessions, or even you said you felt crazy, but so it came to you and you were like, there's something in numerology and you just leaned in. Is that what you're saying? And followed the crumbs until it became your area of expertise?
Well, I mean, I'd like to think that at the beginning I had still had money blocks. I still had wealth belief, a challenge to go and bring it as a brand who's just talking about it. And I was like, no, I don't charge people. I don't do sessions. I'm not into that kind of thing. But I was very fluent and wanted to go into this conversation more and more. And yeah, I guess it was the feeling of like I love drawing, I love dancing, I love singing. Everything I'd done, I've been able to go down to the artist level. And I appreciated being able to do this within the artwork of being able to just have a conversation with someone and they're sitting there at the end of it being like, how do you know me? I'm like, I don't. I mean, the numbers, they're there. And I feel like I just get a chance to honor and witness the power of someone. Yeah. So it's very strange.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that though. And tell us then, when you say it's a technology, and you know, having been a client and had a session with you, I can kind of see that. You know, my brain is often, I'm very good with, you know, maths and physics were strong subjects for me at school, and I can kind of see when you say about this pattern, it's almost like a matrix of numbers. But let's talk to the critic who may be listening, who's thinking, do I really want to listen to this episode? Because, you know, I got them in my family and they're like, oh, astrology, whatever, you know, and numerology, whatever. Let's talk about the critic and just how is this a technology, and how, to your way of understanding it, is it relevant to everyone?
Well, first of all, to the critic, that's me, and I appreciate you so much. I'm the type of person who wants to debunk everything, and I'm kind of just like, when I found numbers, and I was like, this is consistent, and it's duplicatable, and it was like you could test it, right? Like a scientist, I was like, wow, this is awesome, and it made me feel like finally my intuition and my spirit could find a space, because skeptical people are still spiritual, they're still intuitive, they just don't believe in everyone's own perception of what spirit is. It's a very subjective reality. So if I can appreciate how numbers show up and how people agree with it as a set of standards, it builds a language. And then the most surreal thing for the critics to be able to feel, how do you know that? And some of the fun things that people said, like, you must have been Googling me, or you must have figured me out on Facebook before. And I'm like, they're so convinced that I did homework on them. And it's just such a cool feeling. But yeah, I guess the technology part of it, it's the algorithm, right? You would take this inside of ingredients in a baking, or you would do this if you're going to be building constructing a building or a car. Engineering is ruled by math, technology is ruled by math, electricity and everything is a matter of frequency, even sound and light. We measure it in numbers. And so even the amount of words we say, and the reason that I like to think this is such a cool technology is because our language holds so much power, and what you say is like the spell. This is why they call it spelling. And so for us to appreciate that, I mean, you know, it's been such a beautiful journey, because, you know, whether it's words that we use every day, or it's just like helping someone find the name of their brand, and then, oh my God, I found my soulmate along the way, and now I'm naming my kids, and I'm just like, wow, this is so cool. And they're like, I changed my name and everything changed, and I'm just sitting there and be like, it's got to be more than that. because you can't just change a letter and then suddenly everything changes. But if you start changing the way you talk, the way you show up in the world, won't the world show up differently to you? Like, aren't we quantum in our physics that this is like an observer effect? You can't even watch a nanoparticle without it reflecting back to you. So whatever you go out there to the door, out your door with, it's going to show up again. You're going to see what you reap what you sow, right?
Yeah. So let's break it down then for anyone listening, because the fact that you're saying it's not just your name, it's also your business brand, or it's even the words that you speak, which anyone who listens to me enough, I often say we build our world with our words. Like you said, we're casting spells with our sentences and with what we say. So is every letter, like, if, I mean, obviously you're not going to train us to be numerologists, but just for that part, the people listening who are like, kind of want to understand it enough to then have someone who's masterful apply it. So does every letter have a number? Is it like 1 to 26 in the alphabet? And, you know, is it then a matter of addition? And, you know, like on a rough level, if I was born, you know, one day different, does that make a difference on it? Because numerology isn't just name, is it? It's lots of things, is it? Or is it only name?
Well, of course, you know, your birthday, your name, your environment, your parents' name, where you are, the hospital room, and all this. Okay, you can go so intense to think, what's the web of frequency around you? I mean, you get lost in there. So, I mean, I can really, I guess, I just appreciate that you're able to pinpoint on a few things you can't change, a few things you can be aware of, and the few things you can control. So, in the span of life, man, I think it's about awareness of all the things you can't control.
Yeah.
And then after that, you know, your beauty of witnessing what is being given to you so that you can learn and become better. But yeah, you can't go around controlling everything. But I like to think it's like throwing about 5 or 6 different ingredients in a single organization. And even in my line of work, I call it the alignment grocery store, where we go through a bunch of different words you would use. Like maybe you need an email, or maybe you show up on a website, or maybe you show up on a dating site, or maybe you need to know when something is most likely to happen. We could look at dates or names. So there's so many different realms of awareness around what numbers can bring. But on the fundamental level, we're breaking them down. If it's on a word, we're breaking it down to 1 to 9, being like characteristics of basically a self-centeredness or a selflessness, and then the journey from in between there to there. And then if it's in a date, it's either in its brand new beginning, like let's go, or it's in its conclusion cycle, ready for its bye-bye, night-night, and then the next day is going to come in a minute. So it's cyclical, right? And so those are the 2 main realms, is date and space and time.
Yeah. So, okay. So on the time level, you're saying the cycles. So on the time level, it's cycling, cycling, cycling. And then in the space level, is that kind of like expansion, contraction, or meta and micro? Like when you said from the self-centered to the selfless, is that kind of what it's doing, expanding and contracting? Or is it just literally?
Yeah, I'd like to think so until, well, you see, I think, because where's the point of life, right? Do you start at the 1 and then go all the way to the universe and then you're done? Or do you get there? Do you come back? So it's like, where's the equilibrium of existence? It's like, is it about us, or is it just about the harmony of what we're incarnating as in this experience? I like to think we're all a very special gem, and that, you know, all of our own uniqueness is a part of the rainbow. But I'm a firm believer in that the soul experiences thousands of lifetimes. So we're but one stone in the mountain of our being, right?
Yeah, I agree with you 100% about the unique aspects of us making the full spectrum. And I think that is where it allows for the difference, right? Like some people's journey in this lifetime might be the coming into being selfish because they've, you know, martyred themselves for, you know, eons or something. And in this lifetime, they get, you know, they get the experience of learning boundaries, or they get the experience. And when you do the numerology, you do unpack a lot of different things. But one of the key things, my understanding, and of course I'm only a noob to it, is this life path number. That seems like a really important number, is it? That life path number. And is that kind of why we see some people go out and become creators, you know, and other people, like how does the life path, because how many life paths are there, for instance? Like, is it one of 30? How many numbers are there in a life path potentially?
Well,
9?
if you can simplify them to 9, and then mastery numbers would be like 11, 22, 33. And then sometimes if you see on the 22nd or a 22 or an 11 year, they may end up showing up as a life path 32 or a life path, 20. I'm a life path 29. So there's so many different ways to be able to show up. That's like, okay, to keep it simple, it's 1 to 9. And so those are the abilities of the life path, but really it's kind of like judging a book by its cover, because what happens if that person has a really horrible looking name set that didn't allow them to access this leader thing, and instead of being a powerful leader, it was a negative sense of self that was just as one but nowhere near in its powers, was a powerless, and everyone else took advantage of it instead of it being able to take advantage of its opportunity. So it goes in so many different ways that it's like you can't just singular, and that's why the magic of alignment comes in. That says, is the magic you're speaking in accordance to the vibration that you've been born as? You choose your birthday, but you choose your name, right?
So because I'm like, my brain is like, oh, I think I'm starting to get it. So would it be correct to say that, because the big thing that I really wanted to unpack for people is like, why would I have a numerology session? Do you know what I mean? Like, why? Because on the two sides, for instance, there's this thing of, well, if it's all preset, then does it even matter if I know about it? Maybe I'm better off being ignorant, because if it's a shitstorm of numbers, I don't want to know. But what I'm hearing you say there is that, and correct me where and how I'm incorrect on this, that you are born with like a magic that you're able to access. And if your name or other aspects are interfering with that, then you as the alchemist and understander of these powerful numbers can help bring things into alignment to access the parts that we have perhaps not fully unfolded into their full magnificence.
Yeah, it's so true. It's funny that you say the word alchemist. Alchemist is the number 9, which is like ultimate God love. And crazy is the number 1, which is about ego and sense of self. And crazy is the same word as wellness. And so I guess to go back to your question, I would like to think that, if you have the opportunity to see this conversation, isn't that, I mean, this is for the spiritual people. I would like to think it's divinely timed, that there was some greater purpose that you were supposed to learn about a sacred math that's been around for, you can see it in the plants. It's like out there in trees, and it's not a God created thing. This is about how we interpret the different type of personality set types. And to be able to use that, it's a beautiful thing. People using the stars to do it. I like to think your name holds a really powerful vibration of frequency. We can get into the frequency of success, the frequency of wealth very easily. We can also get into the frequency of hurt, the frequency of pain, and we can go down that pain too. So if you have a beautiful name and there's like your subject A, it's like you don't need numerology. And if you see me, I'm like, oh, we're just gonna have a great time. I'm just gonna take you through a tour through all of this amazing stuff in your chart. You're born in a good family. Obviously, you're a doctor. Obviously, you make millions of dollars. Here's your beautiful husband, your beautiful wife, whatever. You have a wonderful, amazing thing. Good job, right? And so you may be curious about what your children are up to or what to name their kids, or you may be so in alignment that you may be coming to me to say, these are my next 10 years. How do I sort this out? Then there could be the other person who's like, I got this great birthday, but my parents decided to name me with 1 S instead of 2 S and Jessica. And now my whole name is all weird and I need to fix this. And if I was only just on that right path, I'd be able to do that, right? Or and vice versa, the birthday's no good, but they got all this power. And it's like, I just don't know why I can't get it together. Like, why is I'm just, like I tried doing everything. Like this guy can do it. She can do it. I can't do it. What am I missing? And I'm like, probably that. But like, we don't get it at the beginning. We just feel we're overpowered because our names are showing such destiny, but we have a karma to grow through. So I might be able to show someone, hey, there's a beauty in, smelling the roses and seeing, that there's a time delay that you have to grow through it. Then there may be the other person who's got, it all out and they're just like, I am determined. This is a destiny of mine. And I'm like, well, so come on to this conversation, because right now we're going to acknowledge everything that you are, bring out all of the power in it, and you get a chance to decide, like the pen is yours. What story are you creating? What's your vision? Like nobody's going to stop you now. And I'll tell you something, the reason why someone comes see me after that first hour, when we're like really telling you everything about your name and your birthday, you feel like you're on cloud 9. because it's like finally someone gets it, someone knows me, someone sees me. This guy doesn't even know me, he knows me, and like you feel so good in that space because I'm your biggest cheerleader. I want to promote that. And
That's
then
really,
and then we look to the name, and we're like, what are we going to connect this to so that you can be in that vibration of wealth and success? And then I show you right before your eyes how it actually looks like the words, and it
yeah.
feels like the words, and you're sitting there at the end. And you know what the really cool thing is? When I look for you after, and then the name is changed, and I'm like, wow, this person went onto their Facebook and they actually changed their name. Some of them call me back and they show me a picture of their new driver's license, and I'm just like sitting there stunned, being like, this is a big, you just changed the destiny of your being. Like the police aren't going to pull you over anymore. Like that's not a fast name. That's a nice and steady name that doesn't want to get into trouble. That's a nice and steady name that gets all the extra goodies and benefits. Sorry, I've gone off on a rant again.
No, it's great. I love it. And I think the key thing really there is that everything, as you said, holds a frequency. And then the world responds to that frequency. Like this is on a base level. And so I did find it really fascinating in our session when you were, changing the numbers in the chart and kind of showing how the same number would hold a frequency, and you'd use different, words, like you might say love or gratitude, they're the same number. And I mean, in the consciousness chart or, any other realm, it's really just understanding those frequencies. And then it would make sense that if you're holding a low level frequency, that you're having a low level experience and that the world's responding in kind. So I'm also wondering, does it ever happen where there is potentially a karmic element in someone's life, and you're kind of saying, well, look, here is what you're here to learn, and even just knowing that, which some people might be like, well, I want any good news, but it potentially, like you're saying, it's like there's an understanding and maybe then an appreciation and a being with it that might even just shift the way that it shows up, rather than the distance to it.
Yeah, because you were mentioning about the person who didn't want to know. Right? It's like my little sister was like, well, what if she's like, I don't want to know what's gonna happen. And I'm like, well, I get that, right? And I mean, to be fair, some of my family is very religious. And so this is a very big taboo that says, hey, God knows your story. What are you doing? And I'm like, God's in the Bible. God is the success. God is queen mode. Like there's so many powerful algorithms. I'm obsessed with scripture because it's so magnetic and it's so like no wonder it's so holy. And I'm sitting in there like going crazy, like, does everyone else see this? And we're like, Bobby, you're going crazy. I'm like, I know. I just got to relax because I get it. What do we all care about? Am I going to be rich? Am I going to be happy in love? Am my children going to go be okay? Am I going to have my house? Like, it's okay if we're just wanting to create a base level of awareness around us. And I'd like to think, hey, of course, but I'm an entrepreneur before I'm a numerologist. You call me numerologist, I'm like, it's more like I help people get to the place they need to be in their life, right? So we sell things and I do numerology and there's all kinds of stuff. But the beautiful thing is that this is such an amazing tool that says, okay, I'm gonna get my stuff together and I'm taking my vision by my own hands and I'm driving it to the direction I want to go through. Because if I can take a skeptical person and they're sitting and be like, how did you know that? And I'm like feeling like, and then on the same space, I'm like, if what I'm saying is true, then why not what I'm going to say about you? If we allow that to be there, shouldn't that also be synonymous? If that already says the words you want, success, I want wealth, I want to create love in my life. Like, okay, let's show you what that looks like. That would be fitting to think, well, this is the stuff that makes it so confusing, right? And a lot of language is very confusing. Like money, love, failure, grateful, awkward, problem, they're all the same number frequency. It's just very strange that we go through this space.
I wanted to ask a question, Bobby. When you said before you're obsessed with scripture because it's magnetic, and like I'm a big believer in everyone's entitled to their beliefs around religion, but I love to study all religions too, to look for the through lines, because I actually feel that there are so many. And I was just curious, from a technology and an algorithm on a numerological level, do you ever see commonalities between, words used in, say, Christian texts like God, disciple, or whatever the words might be, and then say Buddha, and like, are there any kind of parallels? Have you ever explored that, or have you ever had that kind of come up and notice that they're actually kind of all saying this? I mean, the way I would say it without saying it through numerology is you're kind of all saying the same thing, but
Yeah.
inside of the context of, or inside the, yeah, the context, the content is inside the context of your frame. But I can
So
imagine
strange.
there would be lots of lines that would line up.
Well, I mean, let's put one, like, it's so hard to express this. Let me show you how strange this is. In Hindi, the word ajna is the third eye, and it's the same, and the definition of it is a spiritual authority on earth. And if you were to look at the word Moses or the word prophet or the word God, it is literally the same numbers. And
Yeah,
then you're just in there like, this is so
that
wild.
doesn't surprise me at all. I'm like, yes, it's all the same. We're just putting different context around, you know, truth. I think truth with a capital T can kind of be, you know, dressed up or said in different ways, but it's always got a through line. It's just our interpretation of it.
Hindi's in Sanskrit, so it's not even the same language.
Yeah,
And so when I translate the English sound of it, it's just so neat.
yeah, that is cool. And then I'm wondering, you know, and you are a really big cheerleader. So anyone who ends up booking in with you, you will, as Bobby said, leave on a high, because you do focus on the potential in a person and, you know, the magic that's there to be unfolded. And you do that really, really graciously. But I'm wondering, I have the sense that you can look at a chart and you could probably see a lot of potential in someone's chart, and yet they're not showing up that way. And then you might say to them, well, we can do this with the name and we can do this. And there's still potentially a resistance, right? Or there's no change. And so having worked with however many people I'm sure you've worked with to help them get where they need to go. And I suppose my question is, when we're stuck, in your experience, why are we stuck, or what's holding us stuck? What do you think is really holding us from our
That's
truth?
such a loaded question. Honestly, it's 90% of the situation. Even the word business, right? 9 out of 10 of them fail. The word success is an 8 with a 9 in it. So these parts are like, we have to fail a lot, and a lot of people are afraid of that. And so the reason why we won't go to success is because we've become comfortable somewhere in 90% that says, hey, they've paid me for my time already, and they've made it pretty comfortable because I'm still doing this. And I'm of the mind that, you know, technology replaces, you know, very rapidly now. We're not able to go into the same world anymore. And so the vibration of this is very strong to think that we should be thinking differently. But I don't know. I like to think 9 out of 10 people, I'm not going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. And I'm not expecting to be, but I would love to know that I'm at least there to honor space. And to be fair, I set up, like, after a session with me, if it works, you probably are going to just send me people. We're going to do group sessions, or we'll collaborate, but you're, you know, going to be in that realm. If not, I have a private community. I've got monthly free webinar group sessions that I usually charge like $111 for. All the kind of, like, you know, videos, content. Like, I set up a library to get lost in, because I want someone to feel so in love with all of the support that's there when you decide you want to have a mentor. And like, oh yeah, but I know that sometimes it's not going to be so successful right away. I've failed a lot. I've had to go, sometimes my clients come back to me 2 or 3 times with 2 or 3 different businesses, and they've like, oh, I'm doing this now. And I'm like, well, I get it. And I'm still here with you. Let's grow together, because you still got to go through those failures until you learn how to sell yourself properly. That's why you can't sell your products properly. That's why you can't sell your brand, because we're not sold on ourselves. And so I would appreciate being able to share that with someone. There's no judgment. If it's not your time, it's not your time. I like to think, dang, if someone's going to buy mentorship and coaching and show up and actually be there and absorb this, and it's not going to get a result, I feel like we should be doing something together, because cheerleading, right? Like, we don't want to just say, no, let's go, let's keep going, we got this, what else do we need, what else can we do? And in my line of work, I mean, I offer free work, I do payment plans, and I help people, because I know that the giving and gratitude is the same word as wealth. And you're grateful that you have something to share. And so that it showers onto us. My mom and I were talking about it. She's like, God is in your house. I'm like, God is very good to us. You know, we give, and that's it. And we just keep getting, and that's a beautiful space. So yeah, I feel sorry for the people who haven't gotten it yet, because that's like 99% of the challenge of the world. They make us feel like there's not enough, that we have to, like, you know, go out there and dog eat dog, or crab is in the bucket kind of thing. And we get sold on our own story that, you know, you're going to listen to numerology stuff. Oh God. And this person in their family is skeptical, that's like not fulfilled with their dreams of their life. And yet we are so dependent on what the people we love say about us. It's like there's a very scary 5,000 people on our friends list that are like, that can take us down. And I know this is an entrepreneur thing because it's a beautiful space to say, who are you talking to? The ones who are telling you that you're no good, or the people who are waiting for someone like you to show up in their life to say, you could do this too, you know? And they're like, I knew I could do this. I just did some of the time I could do this. And then they decide they want to do this on their own. That's what you're really looking for. And so for me, I'm like, I love that there's 90% of that people want to be around me and want to keep talking to me, want to be there with me. We're growing together and we build a legacy together because there's a space on my table for those, because I'm like, no, we all deserve to eat. And if you're not out there getting your own success, you can have a place in my castle because I need help, right? We're doing this together. And I've created beautiful relationships that way.
And I love what you said that, you know, we do need to fail. It's just a weird relationship we have with that word fail. You know, I always think if we related to fail the way we relate to growth, we'd approach it much more differently, right? But it is the same thing. And yeah, it is.
Grateful is literally the same word as grateful.
Yeah, well, it's the learning, isn't it? So that makes sense to me. Yeah, but it's this phobia of stepping out of comfort and into failure. So I mean, I suppose I'm curious, just even on a history level, where did numerology come from? Is it of a particular culture? Is it related to Fibonacci? Because you mentioned it's in nature. Like, how does numerology chart in relationship to all of the other kind of technologies?
I guess when I learned it, I was taught a version of Chaldean and Pythagorean theorem. This is the thing. And so I guess Pythagoras was this guy who studied the relationship between numbers and math. So he came up with these theories of taking letters from your vowels and consonants and then dividing them out and then putting them back together to make a three-part structure. Every word has a vowel, which is a sound, and a consonant, which is a shape. So you basically put them together to make this like container of language that would Rubik's Cube your way to the success pot or not. And so you would be able to take this with you and communicate with other people. So then in like the other languages, like in Hindi or in like the Indian languages, it's like given from the gods, and the gods by the way are aliens. So I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And then in Chinese numerology, it's like, there's a different culture. Everyone's got it. And I'm just kind of sitting there. I'm like, okay. And then here we are from the 21st century using it from a futuristic standpoint. I look at the Bible, you can change it for anyone who's interested. It's called the Bible Code, where you can turn the Bible into the Hebrew version into an algorithm and start playing with it and messing. It's the most weirdest thing ever. But it's almost like there's something from the future that's beaming backwards at us. And that's that vibration of math. It's the space of being able to travel through time. So we're getting better and better at traveling faster through it. So I like to think that this conversation allows us to navigate that, but it's just so unique a topic.
So it really is like a science, like, you know,
Yeah.
Pythagoras' theorem. I mean, that's math. It's like straight up maths. But
like I go back to math, like
yeah.
Pythagoras theorem, Fibonacci sequence, and like you can see it. My wife grows the sunflowers, and you look at the blade of grass. How come every blade of grass looks the same? And my daughter's like, how come they know, right? How come all the trees look the same, but that tree looks different? And it's the same as people, right? So it's so interesting how form is a matter of the universe.
Yeah, it's like thought precedes form, isn't it? So you're saying that those thoughts have got that vibrational mathematical code encoded into them. So, you know, again, just from a really tangible point of view, if someone was listening, you might have helped someone change their name by like the spelling of their name, but not necessarily the structure of the name. And I would definitely recommend anyone who's listening, and I coach a lot of budding entrepreneurs and coaches who are starting to coach, like, I really wish I had known in advance the power of this. And before you go and brand everything or build, you know, a history, you know, of search engine optimized where your name is associated with the work that you do in the world, if you're in that space where you're about to launch into a new field, or if you're ready to cut ties and go in a different direction with your life, definitely I would say go and have a session, right, Bobby? Because then I mean, your name is your identity in a manner of speaking. And so if you're going to brand yourself either as an individual and, you know, you want to create a mark in the world, be intentional with that mark and definitely get your name assessed. And you were saying too, though, that you can actually do brand names, which is really cool. And it will have
Brand name. I mean, like people come to the addresses. Sometimes we're working with children, or even just helping to find the vibration of love life, right? But I mean, in brands, it's just so you get really lost, because then you can start talking about what do you say to your customers, your clients, your audience, and how do you call your websites. And some people get really lost in the details. And I like to think at the general perspective, I'm like, okay, great. Numerology seems like this really new, shiny thing to like, you can do it and suddenly all this magic is going to happen in your life. But if you think about it from the tangible, skeptical perspective, you got work to do. And knowing yourself is like 90% of the battle. Like you can't just be like, and I just came out with the app and people are like, oh, it doesn't work. I changed my name. Nothing's happening. I'm like, you can't just, you have to know which one is the right one. You got to go through this. Like, aren't you so worth it? Like, I think that's the big deal. And then after the end of it, it's like, man, that really felt, because it's almost like the value we apply to it. And so if someone tells you your story, it's almost like, okay, the universe has seen me. God knows who I am. I better, it's a wake up call. I want to go into this direction. And maybe it's your time. Maybe it's not. But yeah, that's my thought on that.
And I also wonder too, like when you're dealing with the name, the power, when you said like people change their name and they really kind of are a stand for it. If it activates something in them or ignites something in them, and then they change it as a result of that, their beingness is shifted just in that commitment, essentially. So and what would you say would be, other than children, and when you say address, do you mean like if I was looking at leasing a building, the literal address, like I think I remember years ago, actually, one of the very first studios I opened before the one that I have now, that's been in the same place for 17 years. I opened one across town. Lots of people don't know about it. And a friend of mine who was really into feng shui, and the building had all these poles down the middle of it. And she's like, the feng shui in here is terrible. And she was like, and the numerology of this number is shit. You shouldn't lease it. And of course, me being me, I was like, it's fine. Back then, this is like 22 years ago or something. But that business just totally flopped. We couldn't get the people to it. And, logically, it was like, oh, there's not enough parking. It had heaps of street frontage. But since then, I've always wondered, was it the feng shui and the numerology of the street? Who knows, right? But what you're saying is you could check like the energy of that location on the planet and see if it's got good juju, essentially.
Well, yeah, because I mean, other than that being my dog's name, Juju, I mean, I think that the feeling of the energy and the mojo, or whatever you want to call it, it holds a space, doesn't it? Like, just like you feel good when you get into someone's home or your own home, and you're like, no place feels like my place. And I mean, just to be fair, the address that we're in, light bulbs run out really fast. We feel like there are ghost children that aren't our children running around in there. And like, this is such a challenging, and like the house is leaning. It's not our home, right? But my wife does feng shui. So our whole house is still tied together. This right behind you is the meditation area. This is the broadcasting area, the space of communication. So there's so many different pockets of our house that are Bagua map official, that it feels like we're in a spaceship, and we're able to still navigate through our dreams to be able to get this done. I mean, we've done so many repairs on this person's house, and it's like, it's just so intense, because they're like, oh, don't worry about it. I'm like, no. We're paying you guys rent. We're going to send you an invoice. We're going to take care of this. I live my life this way. So I'm going to hold that space up. I'm not afraid to lift a house. But the feeling is that, yeah, the feng shui around it is like, yo, babe, we got to go. We got to go get a better home, because we want something with stable, with castle, with like foundation energy, legacy energy, right? It's like 11 acres on waterfront, or on the mountainside, not on someone else's, beautiful rental opportunity, right? So we're definitely in that space that's like, let's dream, let's go, let's big. And that's a beautiful thing to help us move to the next space.
And I wanted to go back and actually tap into something, because I know it will be relevant for a lot of the listeners. And you mentioned that when you first started, it was like a passion, and you were really, artful at it, but you had money blocks, you called them, around charging. And I'm curious, what did you do to move through those, or to come into a place where you're like, you know what, I know my worth, and I'm going to charge for this, and this is an exchange, or I don't even know, what did you get to around that?
Well, I was building a direct sales business, and then I found numerology, and then I was like my secret weapon. And I was like, when we were doing the network marketing meetings, when it was just all of us connecting together and talking about our businesses, I would be reading people's charts and aligning them. And it was not something I was doing on a. I was like, oh no, no, I'm still working a job, but we obviously this isn't something I do for business. This is just something I found that I was going to help us all because I was a community man. I wanted to be part of the team, and I didn't realize that I was going to be able to turn this into my own brand. It ended up spiraling really out of control. I ended up hitting a really huge rock bottom, getting into drugs really badly, losing my job. I wasn't unable to make any sales happen in my business. And I'm just sitting there getting a job at the mall selling cell phones and just doing drugs on the weekend and the evening. I'm living in my parents' basement. It was just a pathetic lifestyle. And I was just basically like, I can't do this anymore. And then I ended up having trauma with the relationship. And then everything came crashing. I got fired again from the mall. I got I ran out of money. I was basically on withdrawals. My girlfriend broke up with me. I was moving out of my house that weekend. I was falling out of a relationship with my parents. I told him for the first time that I had a drug addiction for like 3 years. And I just dropped the bomb on them. I was like, I'm moving out in March, right? It was the end of February. And they're like, you are crazy. And I was just like, yeah. And at that point, this clarity was lifted off that I was no longer this liar. And I got a small little job yet again. And then next thing you know, my buddy called me up, got me into a call center. Yet again, I stayed clean. And at this point, the person who showed me numerology, his mom, her was like, hey, you're still doing numerology? I'd love to buy a session from you. I'm like, oh, I don't really do that anymore. It's like, just shut up, take my money. I'm like, okay, mama, you got it, right? Because she's like, I know her since I was in high school. So basically, she got me into business. And then I was like, you know what? Oh, I should do this. And then I basically started doing it. And then it just took off from there. I met my wife, and then I was like, I'm gonna go live with her. And then I basically left the mainland to the island, and I could take my job with me. They let me take my call center job with me, my buddy. And I got in there, and I was so busy with clients, and now I was an overnight dad of 3. I had no time to take a call center job, and I was making money at this point. So at that point, God was like, okay, the engine is set. You take care of these children like they're your own, and you're going to be provided for no matter what the hell, bro. We're doing this. Like, you wanted the big vision. There's your soulmate. And so we started creating everything together. And I traveled the world with these kids. We took them to the Philippines, Australia. I took them to Vegas in a car. It was a very good idea. And we basically spoke on stages. It was such a cool thing. Got on iTunes and Apple and Spotify. And oh my God, now I'm on the Marina Perry show. This is so crazy.
I love that. So when I listen to it, though, what I'm really hearing is that you kind of surrendered, or at least control. Sounds like the first thing, like it was like all the pressure, instead of kind of fending it off and keeping the armor, you just went, fuck it, essentially, and just really owned your truth, which at that point was a shitstorm. And then through that, you got to be rebirthed. And then it sounds to me like you just followed the crumbs. Do you know what I mean? Like, let life lead you and stop resisting it. Because sometimes, I mean, I have a lot of listeners who I know that, my heart aches for them because they're so desperate to make the change or to do the thing. And yet sometimes they don't realize that the magic is actually in just like, no, when I say trying less, I don't mean not doing the work. I mean, we don't have to force things. Like, there's so much to be said. I always say I support people with growth, with grit and grace. Like, and grace is a really big part of it. And sometimes the funny thing about grace is it doesn't always show up the way we think. We think grace, just from the energy of the word, it's going to be like this, oh, let me lull you into this beautiful, euphoric, utopian world, and you'll just birth like a flower unfolding. But sometimes, like, grace literally throws a shitstorm at you so that all the things that are clinging to you and destroying your life force literally get ripped from you. It's like we often say, we don't get to choose how it shows up. And we just sometimes have to sit back and go, thank you for that trauma and that drama, as you described it, for reefing me free of the identity that I thought I was, because that's not who I am. And
You
so
got taken away so fast.
Yeah. So it's like leaning in. And sometimes that's the work, isn't it? Like, just leaning into what's calling you, because as we say, what you're seeking is seeking you. It's just sometimes we get in our own way, don't we?
I like to think you got a really beautiful audience. You guys are here with us, and you're like, guys, this is epic. I just want to let you guys know that, like, you've developed something, and that's just a beauty of trust and respect that these people want. There's a divine reason you're listening to this right now. Like, you're here at this moment, and something's opened up for you. That's like, I am, you're better because you heard this, or there's something activated in you. Maybe this is a great Google. Hopefully it becomes a conversation that we get to have. But I like to think that just by being here, you've activated something that you can't turn down. You can't turn off. You can't, it's aware now. And I don't know, I just really appreciate what you're doing because it's just a beautiful thing.
Well, likewise. And so if I was going to ask you for yourself then, because it sounds like, you've had your tough times in life and and I believe every life has seasons, and it's interesting. Some people, I've gone through my valleys. And in those times, I look at people who are like, oh, wow, Marina's going through a really rough time. And I'm like, with love and not projection, but it's like, just when you're on the top of the mountain, it's important to remember that we can all be in a valley as well at times. So life's like this, it's a roller coaster. But my point simply being that when you've been there, or when you step back and have a look, if you were kind of speaking into the person who right now coming into a really interesting time in the world, there are a lot of people that are struggling to hear their own voice. There's a lot of noise in the world, they're confused, they're stuck, all the things. Like, what would be, if you had a mantra or a truth that came through you for them, what would that be? What would you
Oh
share
man,
with
how do
them?
you say it? What's the mantra? I was about to answer, but then you said mantra. And I'm like, okay.
What would that be a mantra?
Well, okay, well, because the thing is that like here's the application. Here's the reality. I'm going through right now one of the most challenging valleys, undergrounds, and the most chasms of canyons of my life right now. That's stretching me and growing me. It's saying, are you going to be the same person that you have been and just be at that same level, or are you going to expand and grow into the man of destiny that's actually going to be this power that you are within you? Are you going to be able to create it around you? And for me, that's one of the biggest challenges, because the kids have been taken out of school. I have 4 children now, and they're all 2, 4, 6, and 8. They're all very small and very young. So it's a very tight and tense situation for me to learn how to be a real parent, a real teacher, a real mentor to these children and become a father. And so in that space, it's like, it isn't about the money anymore. This isn't about the brand. If I want my brand to go into super awesome and I want to go and publish books, I have to put my children together in such a beautiful and encouraging way that they want to acknowledge friendships with me as they grow through their teens and stuff like that. So for me, this is one of the biggest challenges, because for anyone who's gone through what we went through in 2020, the mental anxiety, the challenge of not being able to travel, the problem of being cooped up in a house, that space in there says have all gone completely sideways. And so for you guys, like, oh, you guys are speaking so well. I'm like, yeah, right. No. Trust me on this. We're all human right now. The beauty of what has happened to me says, even through that, losing my grandfather in December, we got cremated. We didn't know the date. He hasn't had his ceremony yet. And this is like, oh, so challenging. We loved that guy. And now my mom can't even grieve properly, all at the same time. It's happening over Christmas. And we're having a falling out with my in-laws. Like, it's a bomb zone and it's a war zone. And I'm sitting here being like, whoa. Like we're blessed. We wake up each day with a grateful heart. Me and my wife love each other. My kids and I are happy. We've got to go to the grocery store. We're, like, everybody's flourishing. We're thriving. We're growing. We're getting, like, you're so blessed. And every time my phone goes off, like someone's booking a session, and we're safe. And it's like, we're being elevated because we did the work, man. And I'm not going to be falling to those negative things that I did when I was a kid. Now I get a chance to grow and be that man, because it's a new valley. It's a new space. So you're never going to stop. And I mean, even in the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, Mark Ronson says, you're never going to trade your problems in for none. Like, you're always about increasing the quality of them. And even Jim Carrey says he wishes people would make money so he realized it wasn't about money. And I'm like, man, that's so true. Because once you figure out the base of creating it, you're not really focused on it anymore. It's about the vision, the purpose, it follows the passion, and profits follow that. So, everybody's eating. And if you're not, come with me. Let's work together. I'll find a way. Let's create money together if that's all you need to do. It feels good to be in a space to provide value. And so that's what I like to put people in, because, we're building something.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think you're right. I mean, it's about who you're being in the chaos, because you often can think everyone else's life is going smoother, but the truth is, one, it's not life if it's perfect. You know what I mean? Like, life by its very definition, I think, is the experience of that spectrum of emotions. And we should be so blessed to get to experience it all. And how we relate to it is really the learning and the lesson. So what book in your life or experience or teacher came along at the right time or landed in your lap? You just mentioned one, the subtle art of not giving a fuck, but is there one maybe that came before that, that if you were like, hey, this really touched my soul, for someone listening today, this may be the magic that you need? So what would you give a shout out to? And we'll link to that book.
Oh man, there's so many that come to across. There was, I mean, the stuff that has really made the most biggest impact. I like, because you see, because the path has been things like Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, David Kikandi, Happy Pocket Full of Money, growing into things like Grant Cardone and sales stuff and things like that in the space of communication. Bob Proctor. And then it kind of grew into spaces like Dr. John DeMartini or Dr. Joe Dispenza. And this is work on, the chemicals in your brain and like the actual chemistry of the robotics of your being mixed with the spirituality. And then that space in there allows you so much more control. And I think that for me has been like the stage was set with mindset and learning the law of attraction and getting into that magnetic space of it and the quantum physics level of it, to understand it as a mechanism, and then to take on the program that says thoughts and feelings like electricity and magnetism and their brain and your heart need to be working in a heart brain coherence, right? Joe Dispenza says this. So it's connecting those two. And for me, I'm like, oh my God, I listen to it every morning. And it goes on my alarm, even though I only hit a few seconds of it. You dial into gratitude. And that's and that space, you slow your heart rate down, your body's no longer fighting the tiger, and you're able to calmly move through space in a connected position. And really, that's what we need right now. Everyone's an expert. But I'd like to think the program that they're giving us, when I see Dispenza's work, it's like, how do we take this to the next level now and cradle the spirituality, but understand it from the skeptical point of view? That's like, look, you can see this on a microwave graph. Like, this person's going through a brainwave experience. Like, this isn't a spiritual thing anymore.
I agree. I think that Dispenza's done a great job of selling magic to the minefield of the mind.
Yeah.
Like, so that the mind goes, oh, that makes sense, instead of going, oh, that just seems crazy. Like he's really bridged that gap so beautifully, and I'm grateful he did.
And I'll also want to shout out, because I want to talk to Matt Kahn, and I also want to talk to Vishen of Mind Valley, because those guys have just done some amazing work. My wife has been just growing monumental levels as a mentor to me and her own personal life through those guys, and myself through Matt Kahn. Love that guy.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, we'll link to each of their websites as mentors. And now, as a quick fire, Bobby, like what is your number one tip, your number one go-to to increase energy or vitality in a day? Like, what would you suggest? What's your number one tip?
Oh my gosh. To create, I mean, the knee-jerk reaction says you have to have a healthy sexual relationship with yourself or your partner, your spouse. If you don't, you're probably not waking up in a good mood. You're not probably waking up in a very inspired space. And I like to think that the endorphin release reduces the trauma and stress mechanism inside of your body, and it creates a chemical thing inside of you. If you can't do that, you can definitely go for a workout. You can definitely go and have some water and go and meet the sun and go and stretch and like really do some yoga and stretch. But like, physical movement is the most important thing. I mean, you guys, we forget this so easily, that the body is a mechanical thing. It's like we're the pilot on the inside, and we are like, oh no, man, I need the cacao, I need the coffee, I'm gonna mix them together, whatever. Like, I want to do whatever they can to wake up. And I mean, I appreciate that stuff as well too, but I nothing replaces the ability to move, especially if you're stuck somewhere. Unless you're physically stuck and you can't move, that would probably be not a good thing. But
you're speaking my language here with movement, for sure. But you know what? I have to say, honestly, I've asked that question to a lot of people, and no one has ever answered with nookie. So that I love.
You know, it's a weird thing. I'll tell you something. So it was like 3 months to my wedding, like good season and a half. And I got a gym membership, and my buddy was training me, and I lost like maybe 4 pounds. And then after COVID hit, I dropped the membership. We went for a single walk every day, and our exercise was in the bedroom. And then I dropped 30 pounds. I had to buy new size jeans. Like, I'm telling you guys, like, diet and healthy lifestyle replaces extreme space. And I mean, I'd love to think that you know, having balance is great just for everyone who loves to be athletic. I'm no advice giver, but I would like to think that, you know, if you want to drop 30 pounds of emotional weight, it might be a good idea to change some of the more instrumental ways of how you appreciate your life, and you'll just realize what no longer has space around you.
And I love that. I love that. I love that so much. And the main reason that what I feel is what you're sharing is so true is because when we are in the mood energetically and mentally to essentially either just for practice or to reproduce, we have to be in our in our sympathetic nervous system. And, you know, so your system is calm because you don't, your mind, if you're stressed, you're not going to be up for it. And so, and then even that endorphin and that dopamine and that serotonin hit that you get from connection, that then means you're not going to reach for food, for calories, for numbing and for all the stress, and your body's not going to be, you know, coursing cortisol through your body and then holding on to fat stores. So I mean, the science actually backs up what you're saying, but I just never had anyone say it. So I'm stoked on that because I think we all need to get a better relationship.
Well, yeah, and to be fair, 2021, there's gonna be a lot of power in there. People gonna have babies. There's a lot of that baby boom stuff gonna be happening. So just a nice, cool thing. Me and my wife, we create what we call a sex smoothie. So it's pineapple juice. We do coconut, and there's actual like coconut juice, pineapple juice, actual coconut, banana, and then maca and celery. So just in case you guys are down to get in on that.
That's a great. That's a
and
great.
it's a beautiful space, and we just, you know, it's a ceremonial ritual, right? And in the morning I do her tea because obviously you definitely want to honor a woman that way. And so it's a beautiful space to be in. Happy wife, happy life is good advice.
I think good advice.
And, yeah, so
okay, so then the next rapid fire question, which we didn't rapid fire because I jumped in.
Sorry.
But I love that. No, I love it.
Rapid fire, come on.
Yeah,
okay, I got you.
So what would be your number one tip to elevate the experience of empowerment? Like what's your go-to to feel really empowered in yourself?
I have put sticky notes all over my house that say things that I have numerologically verified so that I know when I'm saying things like I am wealth, I am legacy, I'm actually running at that vibration. I put them on my mirrors, I put them everywhere, and it really does elevate your mood just because and to be fair, I actually mostly put them at eye level or above where all my pictures usually are in my house because I want to make my eyes and my brain go up. And that's also where my babies can't, you know, take anything off the shelf, right?
I love that. And, you know, at the end of the day, we're brainwashed either way, right? Like whether it's mainstream media, so you may as well brainwash yourself with the belief that you're just the most epic human here to have the most epic life because you're going to believe what you brainwash yourself with, you know, so I love that. You get ahead of the curve and
society will tie-dye you. You're the one who has to wash your brain. So they're going to wrap you in their image, or you can wash yourself clean by feeding yourself the program you need, right?
Yes, yes, yes. All right. And then last of all, what would be your tip for elevating expression in the world? So once we've got the energy and we're feeling empowered, like what's your tip to really be your message in the world or share your message with others or your way of being? It doesn't have to be business or you know, branding.
Well, the easy and simple answer would be to make sure that the name itself that you're using, you're broadcasting from, feels like it wants to communicate, and then it just sort of brings that magnetism from you. And then other than that, I mean, once that feeling hits you, you stop trying to think of things to say, and you just honor the story that you've had and realize that your emotion is enough to help someone in an audience be helped. Like they want to thank you. They're better because of that experience. That's basically like the most empowering thing is that you're like, wow, that was me. Like that was my story. It was my healing. That was my thing I went through as a kid that I've released from the so-and-so. And there's just such a beautiful honor in that. I think that it really helps to help you. If your name is like, oh, I'm going to do that. Are you kidding me? Then, you know, you're probably not going to feel too liberated. So I'm like, oh, that's a cheap answer because I get the good name. But at the same time, your story is so potent. It's so good. It's like the reason why everything matters.
So if you're not feeling like you can own it, get into a place or a space where you can. I love that. Okay. And if the whole of this podcast got deleted, it's not going to, but if it did, and then all we had left from you, Bobby, was like the next sentence, or it's like a message in a bottle that you could send out to every human on the planet. And you're like, yo, team, just this. This is really the important thing. Please remember this.
Guys, just please remember that, you know, you are trying to write the lottery ticket on the winning ticket. You're trying to find the winning number on the back of the ticket that's already been given to you. Like, you are success embodied. And that's a beautiful feeling. Sometimes your name, great, it wasn't given to you properly. You can blame your parents, you can blame yourself if you want, but now that you know it's here, shouldn't you have the technology to get yourself, I mean, you have the awareness to make the difference in choice now. And if you're into your story so much, you're like, no, I'm not sure. Then I would like to say, you know what? I hope you find enjoyment. I hope you find love. I hope we can create comfort for you. I mean, I'm sad that there are people out there who have lost the joy in life. And I'd like to think those are the people watching this. And so for those of you guys who like, just remember this, it was in you the whole time. It was just a matter of brushing it up, twisting it, turning it around, putting a feather in the right angle, and you're ready for the races. You're the winner of your own show. Don't be the side actor in your own life. Like, you know, it's a very, very painful place to live. And there's enough entertainment and chemicals out there to make you feel like, you know, you have not noticed. So if someone else you find out there, and this is, I guess, the second part, for those of you guys like, Bobby, I'm speaking your language. For those of you guys who know that someone's in that fog, don't try to shake them to wake them. Like, just lovely acknowledge what you can. Like, you know, you're not going to get mad at a dog for not speaking English, and don't treat your friends like they're animals. You know, understand that, you know, they've found their comfort in a certain way that you couldn't find, and that maybe you'll create a comfort that invites them one day. But until then, you're serving the people who need you. So your story is more than enough. It's the most authentic thing you'll ever have. Good luck trying to sell a product. You should probably look at what you are and the product of your environment. Is that worth broadcasting? If it's not, hey, just to make sure at least you got a pretty good legacy attached to it, where you don't mind telling people that you were high on drugs because you know where you're going. People are like, damn, that's inspiring, bro. I'm like, hell yeah, it is. Meet my boy. I would never have been able to met him if I didn't go through all of this. And that's a beautiful thing, right? That's real life.
Yeah. I say a lot that our mess is always our medicine and eventually, usually, our message to the world and our magic. So I love that you're owning yours and helping people untap theirs. Bobby, you are an inspiration. Your vibration is just a joy to be in. Thank you for who you be in the world and what you do and how you help others. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll invite everyone to tag us and if they've got questions. And of course, we're going to link to all your biz in the show notes. So if you feel called, don't hesitate. Book in with Bobby. It's super easy. You can just do it via his calendar links. It's really fast and I highly recommend it. So Bobby, thank you for being a guest on the show. Big loves.
Absolutely so honored that you created this space. What a powerful conversation. Thanks, Marina.
Bye.